Thank you everyone for joining the 6th Annual Brain Health Forum. We really appreciate it. We are excited for a robust discussion, primarily focusing on challenges in long-term caregiving. Just a couple of reminders I'd like to point out. We have the Q&A box. If you have any questions, if you could use that function as opposed to the chat, we'd really appreciate it. We're going to start with several speakers and then move into a brief remarks from a few regional resource providers, and then have a nice robust Q&A with some of our featured speakers. So with that, I will turn it over to Barbara Marquez, who has been a great volunteer with the Alzheimer'S Association Northern California, and a great partner for our office in several capacities. And she's going to introduce our first two speakers. So I can pass it on to Barbara.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. This is a very important topic. I'm a former caregiver, and these are some of the issues that I wish I know. We're going to be presented with some information that's going to be important for those who are currently caregivers. And also we'll talk about ways for former caregivers to get more involved in addressing some of the needs. I have the great pleasure of introducing a fellow resident of Sacramento County, a long-term resident. She's one busy person. She's a business owner, author, life coach, wife, and now she is the sole caregiver of her husband of 20 years, Patrick. After 13 years of marriage, Carla started noticing some changes in her husband's behavior. At this point, she discovered how hard it would be to get a timely dementia diagnosis. Carla soon realized that she had to face not only the ongoing changes in her loved one, but her own need to make constant adjustments in being Patrick's primary caregiver. After 4 years, Carla took her husband to a medical provider outside their health plan network in search of answers. Taking findings from Stanford University Medical Center back to her husband's doctor here in Sacramento, finally led the doctor to order a PET scan that revealed that Patrick had Lewy body dementia. Precious time had passed with a 4-year delay in the diagnosis, time that Carla could have used better to plan for her work, her home, and self-care transitioning, a story that I think many people can relate to. Carla calls this transition on the fly. She now has to consider the out-of-pocket cost of adult daycare, averaging about $75 a day, and or in-home care, averaging about $1,000 to $6,000 per month. These changes left Carla with the heartbreaking decision to close her salon and sell her home. Carla's mission is to help caregivers better manage their self-care and to address the obstacles that they confront while caring for their loved one. Again, we're going to hear a lot of numbers and a lot of facts and figures, but what we need to remember, and Carla's story will keep this in mind, is that we're talking about family members, loved ones, we're talking about our neighbors. So it's a great honor. I present Carla Prayer to you. Welcome, Carla.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for the introduction. And thank you, Congressman Bera, for taking the opportunity just to listen to my story. That is, I'm finding this quite common amongst many, many other caregivers. So after me getting my trying to get my husband's diagnosis, the constant change in our lives were just overwhelming. Like I said, after the 4-year diagnosis, it just totally robbed us of the time that we needed to, or could have used and needed to better make decisions. I found myself just really stagnated in trying to figure out what's next. Trying to figure out what's next and what moves to make and how long it took to get that diagnosis. And then just trying to live and just do day-to-day work. So as a caregiver, not knowing, I've never had to step in that role before to be a caregiver. So not knowing what to do, how to do, what it's going to take, you're just feeling overwhelmed and left feeling stagnant because you just don't know what's next. So when I went to go looking into different ways to get respite, the numbers were stagnating. Like in the bio, the cost of it, I could only afford 1 day a week, $75 a day. That was like $300 a month that I could only afford that 1 day a week. And it's just feeling like, okay, what am I going to do now? And there's so many, as I'm in several support groups, thank God for social media, but I'm able to connect with other people. And I realize my story is not unique. There's so many of us that are young, I'm in one of the groups that we're trying to find care. A lot of us are still working. A lot of us are still raising children at home. This disease has gotten so stagnated that we're trying to find the ways to care for ourselves and our loved ones. So the things that we have to do and just trying to figure out what it takes to care for our loved ones when we just don't know, you're just thrown into the situation. So once I realized that, okay, I can no longer keep my salon open, I had to sell my home. It was, the home that my husband loved and just really adored this home, but we had to sell it so I can better care, for the things that we needed. And then I realized I had to close the salon. And then once that stopped, then the next transition, it was like, I need to figure out how to get my income while at home, because I just he could not longer be at home alone by himself. So all this I'm trying to find out is like, how am I going to cover this? How am I going to be able to care for him? Frankly, how am I going to be able to care for myself? Feeling overwhelmed, heart-wrenched, not knowing, watching the changes, and now I understand why they say a lot of times the caregivers are the first to go. Now I'm a fairly young, healthy woman, but I too have been feeling so overwhelmed to where I felt like I was on the verge of snapping because I had no relief nowhere. I had no respite, small family, a couple of friends that would come and try to step up and help out. But in actuality, we need this time. We need time to more than just a every now and then thing, but how can a lot of us get help when the cost is so great? I was overwhelmed when I seen the cost of this, and of course you have the different programs that veterans have access to, or you get Medicaid or Medi-Cal. Well, my husband doesn't qualify for all that. So I'm really looking into ways to do this. And so, like I said, I finally got the 1 day a week. And then of course, coronavirus stepped up and that took that away, literally feeling like I'm just choked and can't do anything. The journey goes on and on and on. And like I said, my story is not unique. I speak for many caregivers that are wearing the exact same shoes that I'm wearing. So I will say I was able to hook up with a Del Oro caregiving services. They have been a life-saving grace, just knowing that they were going to start. Actually, today is my first day. Someone's with my husband right now. And it's just knowing that was coming really relieved me. Not only that, they were able to provide counseling for me because I had a number of things going on along with this journey of caregiving. I would really like to see more assistance with this. Because with me having to sell my husband Pride and Joy home, with me having to close my salon, it was heart-wrenching. It was heart-wrenching to have to just, you know, I wouldn't change it. I would not, I will always be, I've chosen to be by my husband's side, to do what it takes to walk him through this journey. And quite frankly, I feel like I'm blessed to be a part of this journey. So as we move forward, I really want to see what other things we can do as have caregiving services for us caregivers, because I can't, there's no way I will be able to continue because of what I'm feeling and how I'm feeling. Literally, it's heart wrenching. I mean, the journey is feeling very lonely. It's just a part of the journey that people don't know how to help you, but we need the assistance. We need assistance in these programs like Demaris that help provide, because it's so, the cost is so over the top. So after, we're now in year 7 of watching my husband go through and me trying to figure out how to pay my bills, how to move forward in just housework, cleaning, maintaining everything he needs. You know, for myself, I've had to learn how to figure out how to do my self-care and exercise routine, but I had to include him in what I do for myself in my physical routine. But of course, that does leave me, it cuts short because I'm tending to him while he's working out and can't really get into it like I want. This is a journey, I tell you, that is so different. And just to watch my husband as a operating room nurse, to go from him being the caregiver, he was a natural born caregiver, and now the tables have turned and I now care for him. So I'm hoping that we can find a way of solutions that we can help us as caregivers so we're not so overwhelmed. Like I said, I understand why they say many times the caregivers are the first to leave before the loved one. I totally understand that now in year 7. And I pray that I can maintain this and be able to be assistant and help others find ways and activities they can to care for themselves while they're caring for their loved ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. You know, you're not alone. In California alone, we have 1 million Californians who are providing unpaid care for their loved ones. And so thank you for speaking about your story and also sharing a part of their story as well. And we're glad that you are getting some additional assistance from Del Oro, and we'll be hearing from them later. But it's really important that we all speak out and ask for help when we need it. And so with that, we'll transition over to hear from our congressman. He's been a strong supporter of policies that really do help people who are living with Alzheimer's and their caregivers. And he's also been a strong supporter of additional funding to NIH to, you know, research for that cure and the better treatment are all seeking. Congressman Bera has served in the U.S. House of Representatives since 2013, and he's represented all of us who live in the 7th Congressional District, which encompasses much of Sacramento County. He's currently a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, where he serves as chairman of the subcommittee on Asia, the Pacific, Central Asia, and non-proliferation. He's also a senior member of the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology. He's a first-generation American-born and was raised here in California. He attended California public schools from grammar school through medical school, earning his bachelor's in medical degree at the University of California at Irvine. During his 20-year medical career, prior to entering the Congress, Congressman Bera practiced medicine in the Sacramento area. He served as the medical director of care management for Mercy Healthcare, and he also served as the chief medical officer of Sacramento County. We're very pleased that he initiated 6 years ago, this health forum. And so here we are, the 6th annual Brain Health Forum. Thank you, Congressman.
Barbara, thank you for that generous introduction. And thank you to both you and the Alzheimer's Association here locally for the strong partnership that we've had together. My recollection is that this Brain Health Forum was the first of its kind in the United States and has only gotten bigger and with more participation over the years. Obviously, I wish we could be together in a room, but we've not missed a beat continuing the importance of getting this information out to folks virtually during the pandemic. Carla, thank you for sharing your story. And as Barbara said, we know you're not alone, that, as a physician, certainly saw it in many of my patients, but in my own personal life, while my mother-in-law didn't have Alzheimer's dementia, she had multi-infarction dementia. And we watched as my father-in-law, both of them were in their 80s, essentially struggled to care for her. And then they were down in Los Angeles, we were up here, and just watched the toll it took on my wife as she, both of us were working together to try to provide the right level of support. And this story plays out, over and over again. And my hat's off to President Biden. The American Jobs Plan, and he stated this publicly, is billions of dollars to go to home care and caregivers. And here's why that's so important. We know the majority of the time it is a daughter that or a wife that is being pulled out of the workforce, much as you had to close your salon, Carla, to care for a loved one. And if we could actually create that workforce so you could keep your salon open, but there'd be someone there caring for your husband during the day until you were able to get back, that's hugely important, both to maintaining your ability to keep working and those caregivers' ability to keep working, but also for that respite, because it's not just the patient, it's the caregiver and the entire family. Now that's, that's a bill that we hope to take up in this Congress and get passed and get to the president's desk. And I know it's important to President Biden, and he understands and empathizes with what so many American families are going through. In addition, this week with regards to Alzheimer's, we saw the first medication get approval from the FDA. And it's the first medication in a long time to potentially help mitigate some of the impact of Alzheimer's disease. But it's not enough. We have to continue to fund research. We have to continue to fund research for better diagnostic tools. So, we as physicians and healthcare providers can make a diagnosis earlier, but then ultimately what we want to do is have better treatments and ultimately get a cure. So, as Barbara mentioned, we've stood committed to continue to funding to the NIH and other mechanisms on the research side. And as we've seen with these remarkable vaccines that we developed very quickly, if we put our minds to it, if we're focused, we can actually find that cure. So again, thank you for the partnership to the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you for the service that you do to all the residents in our community.
Thanks, Congressman, for the remarks and joining us today. Real briefly, I'm going to launch one more poll just to kind of get an idea of who's on with us today. So if you can take a moment to respond to that, appreciate it. All right, and then I'm going to introduce real quick Dr. Sukatu Kantar of the Parkinson's Association of Northern California. He's going to give a brief remarks of the association as well as the resources they provide. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Kantar.
Thank you very much, Philip, and I want to thank the Congressman for inviting me here today. So my name is Suketu Kandar. I'm a Parkinson specialist, and I run the Parkinson program for Northern California Kaiser Permanente. And it's a pleasure to be here for this Brain Health Forum. I represent the Parkinson's Association of Northern California. This is a large support organization based here in Sacramento that is dedicated to serving those in the Northern California area, those families who are affected by Parkinson's disease. They oversee nearly 40 different support groups, ranging anywhere from the Santa Rosa region, all through the Sacramento Valley, and even down into the Central Valley. They also host an annual symposium that is patient-facing and attracts up to 1,000 participants. And we plan on having one again this year on October 23rd in Roseville. They also serve a respite program for those care partners that are in need, and also have a medical advisory panel that has representation from UC Davis and our colleagues at Sutter Health, Mercy Dignity, and Kaiser Permanente. You might wonder that why Parkinson's Association? What does this have to do with the Alzheimer's Association or the need for caregiver support? And the reality is that there's so many similarities between Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. Number one, they both are neurodegenerative conditions. In fact, the first and second respectively. They both can lead to dementia. And absolutely, as the old adage says, they both require caregiver support, basically taking a village to help support these folks affected by dementia. I'm so moved by Carla's story and many others that have talked to me in the past. And I really do hope that through the Congressman's support and all of your support, that we really can help those patients that I tend to see, but also my colleagues tend to see, who are living and affected by dementia in our area. So thank you so much, Philip. Thank you so much, Congressman Bera, for giving me a few moments to at least represent the Parkinson's Association. And good luck with the rest of the forum.
Thanks, Dr. Kandar, and taking a few moments out of your busy day. Really appreciate it. All right. Next, I'm excited to welcome and introduce Kate Washington. Kate Washington is the author of Already Toast, Caregiving and Burnout in America, and the dining critic for the Sacramento Bee. Her writing has appeared in the New York Times, Time, Eater, Catapult, and many other publications. She holds a PhD in Victorian literature from Stanford University and lives here in Sacramento with her husband and 2 daughters. Thank you, Kate, for taking the time to join us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It is such a pleasure to be here and talk about this important issue that, as you mentioned, is the subject of my recent book. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about the larger landscape of caregiving that I think Carla did such an amazing job of giving us the human face of what it means to be a caregiver and a long-term caregiver for somebody with dementia. My own journey is a little different. I was first a writer and then became a caregiver for my husband, who suffered from 2 kinds of cancer and went through a stem cell transplant. So it is a different kind of story than what those of you in the dementia caregiving world will be familiar with. But I think that we'll see that there are a lot of common themes among all kinds of unpaid family caregiving. Just briefly, my story. So I was 42 and my husband was 44, and our daughters pictured on this slide were quite young, just my younger one just starting kindergarten, when my husband came to me and said he had strange lumps along his jawline. And he used to play hockey, so I kind of thought, he thought, oh, maybe he took a stick to the face or something. But he said, should I go to the doctor? And I said, yeah, you should go to the doctor. And it took several months to get a diagnosis, nothing compared to what Carla went through trying to get a diagnosis for years. But that was, time lost, time when I was researching and trying to figure out what might be going on. We were pushing for biopsies. He was diagnosed, and I still didn't really feel like a caregiver until one day when we were sitting down to dinner. It was a warm summer evening, much like this time of year. And all of a sudden he called from the bathroom before he came to the table, come here right now. And he was coughing up blood from a lung tumor that had burst. I rushed him to UC Davis Hospital, which is our medical group and close to where we live in Sacramento. And all of a sudden I was plunged into the world of caregiving. And I think this illustrates 2 different ways people come into caregiving, either the long, slow journey where it kind of sneaks up on you, or the short, sharp crisis. And I think dementia caregiving probably most commonly characterized by the slow realization that something needs to be done, that people need to be attended to get a diagnosis. In either case, a common theme is that there's not that much training for the role, and often we don't have much choice as caregivers about whether we enter the role. We love somebody, family member, spouse, friend, beloved parent, a child, and they're sick and we need to help. What we're often not prepared for is the intensity of those demands, which is something I certainly was not when my husband became ill. When he came home from the hospital after his diagnosis and chemotherapy, he had a collapsed lung, and suddenly I was finding myself giving him IV antibiotics through his PICC line. And this was not something I ever expected to do. You know, people can often be doing very intense and often more complicated than that medical procedures. There's also the intense time demands of attending to somebody. That's a really common theme in dementia caregiving, as I think Carla illustrated so eloquently. All of this leads to emotional strains, and also, as Carla pointed out, incredible financial costs and high financial burdens on caregivers, which is something I'll talk about again shortly, and to really high stress levels and a risk of burnout. Many caregivers suffer burnout. This leads to decreased empathy, increased stress, health effects, and a host of other problems. I think the pandemic has really pointed out and underscored how commonly care demands can lead to burnout. I really felt alone through a lot of this journey, but next slide, please. As you'll see, I was 100% not alone. There are 53 million people in America providing unpaid care to an adult friend or family member. That is an enormous, enormous number. I'm going to break down a little bit who we caregivers are. Next slide, please. The average age of a caregiver is 49 years old. That's really close to my current age, but I think a thing to take away from that age, more than just the number, is that often means that people are sandwiched. They're caring for a parent. The classic sandwich is a parent and caring for a child or children at home. But there are many ways that people have multiple care responsibilities, and that, of course, adds to strain. About 2/3 of caregivers, depending on the study, are women. Sometimes some figures put it higher. A thing to note about women providing the majority of care is that women also tend to have a higher burden of care. They engage in more demanding care tasks. They spend more time per week on their caregiving duties. That's just what the studies have shown. And that is not at all to devalue the incredible and needed work of male caregivers, which we need to encourage more care and more engagement with care among, our male colleagues in caring. There are a lot of disparities in caregiving. The highest prevalence is among the Black and Latinx communities, meaning that more members of the Black community and more members of the Latinx community are caregivers than in comparable communities. Black and Latinx caregivers are also entering into that work younger on average. And the youth of caregivers is increasing across the board. Millennials and even Gen Z are increasingly becoming caregivers. That is in part because of the growing generation gap and the aging of our population. The oldest of the baby boomers are turning 75 this year, and with that comes increasing age and need for care, not in all cases, but it's certainly increasing. And so experts have identified that we're having a care gap coming in the future. I also wanted to point out that among those 53 million, 16 million people are Alzheimer's caregivers. That is a high number. And that also really underscores the length of time and the duration of the tenure of most Alzheimer's caregivers. This is a long-term commitment. Next slide, please. I wanted to talk a little bit about the impact of that caregiving work, a lot of it economic. Studies have shown that the value of unpaid care provided to family members is $470 billion annually, and that is probably low. That is based on a figure of, I believe, an average of 16 hours a week and $12, they calculated it at about $12 an hour. So if you think about, your own or a family member's caregiving duties, often they expand to vastly more than 16 hours a week. This leads female caregivers in particular to reduce work or quit work entirely. That's a 70% figure, leading to huge lifetime costs that include not just lost wages, but also lost retirement savings and other opportunity costs. There are also, as Carla alluded to, a lot of direct costs, out-of-pocket costs for respite care, medication, all the things that care recipients need. That $7,000 figure, I actually would also suspect that that is probably low, on the low side. These figures below, 75% of caregivers worried about their own health, and 60% of caregivers report that they're under high stress. Those are from the Alzheimer's Association and refer to Alzheimer's caregivers, but I think they're common across the board of caregivers. So next slide, please. This looming caregiving gap and all of the effects and demographic characteristics that I pointed out before really show that caregiving is not an individual problem, and all too often we are left as individuals to find our own solutions. But what we really need are systemic solutions. And I know my colleagues who are going to speak next are going to talk a lot about community and organizational solutions. I want to point to a few policy solutions because, as the Congressman alluded to, this has become a real policy priority for President Biden. It was a priority in the campaign, and I think it's a really hopeful moment for some change around caregiving. Next slide, please. Some of the key policies that we could implement to support caregivers. One huge key is more training and support for family caregivers. That's on the table for Alzheimer's caregivers in particular with the Alzheimer's Caregiver Support Act. We desperately need paid family leave. I actually saw President Biden's accounts tweeted and Instagrammed about this just, I believe, yesterday or the day before, saying that it is a disgrace that we do not have paid family leave, sick leave, or caregiving leave in this country. And that is on the table with the Family Act, the possibility of mandated federal leave across the board. That would obviously provide caregivers with a lot of support to do their work. We need to invest in home care, as the Congressman said, through the American Jobs Plan, which provides $400 billion to shore up home care, and that would provide respite, offer better options for family caregivers to have paid support in the home and keep their loved ones at home. Other ideas that people have floated for the future, and these are kind of big dream ideas, include tax credits, other economic relief. Currently, for those who qualify for Medicaid, there is direct pay to families, and there is also some of that within the Veterans Administration. But as Carla noted in her talk, that leaves out a huge swath of families. So looking at other ways to provide economic relief for caregivers is really, really critical. And I will just put out there in my big dreaming, we really desperately need a strengthened social safety net that would include provisions for long-term care and integrated forms of care. There's been a lot of talk in recent weeks about how care is infrastructure. It is the thing that enables us all to work and for the economy to function. If our loved ones are not being cared for, we cannot do that. Next and final slide, please. And so in conclusion, I really just wanted to say that caregiving for our loved ones is always going to be a stressor. It's never going to be easy, but there are ways to support it better and offer more alternatives to people who are doing this really critical work of caring for the most vulnerable members of our society and the people we love the most. And that is why I wrote my book. If you're interested in connecting, I put my Twitter handle, my website, but I really just want to thank Congressman Bera and the Alzheimer's Association for the invitation to speak to you today, and I'll look forward to hearing from my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate. And we'll be getting to hear from you a little bit later in the Q&A portion as well. All right. So next, I'd like to introduce Susan Demaris. of the Alzheimer's Association, Northern California. Since 2013, Susan has led public policy and advocacy at the National Alzheimer's Association in California. She advocates for legislative, budget, and regulatory changes at the state capitol on behalf of the 1.5 million Californians directly impacted by Alzheimer's disease. In California, the Alzheimer's Association has secured key legislative victories, including leading the effort to implement the state's Healthy Brain Initiative. Susan is active as an appointee to Governor Newsom's Alzheimer's Prevention and Preparedness Task Force, which is chaired by former First Lady Maria Shriver, as well as being active with the Master Plan for Aging. Susan is a proud mom to 2 adult daughters and resides here in Sacramento. She draws inspiration for her work from her own mom's experience with dementia. Thank you, Susan, for joining us.
Thank you so much, Philip. I'm just honored to be here, and I really want to thank Congressman Bera. I think this forum illustrates his leadership so well across our region in bringing together groups and individuals who have so much in common, and really helping us to focus on our commonality and our strengths and to find common policy and community solutions. So thank you, Congressman, for this 6th annual Brain Health Forum, and to the panelists who preceded me. We'll be talking about what we all share in common. We can move to the next slide. So you heard this from Kate. I can reinforce some of the statistics that she shared with you. And it is very common that that 2/3 are women, whether, whatever the condition is, and specific to Alzheimer's and dementia. And Carla really typifies this, that it's 48 hours per week on average. And for anyone who works full time, this would be overtime in a paid job. And these are unpaid caregiving roles that so many millions of people fill across the country. We also heard from Carla that in her case, it's been 7 years now. So in the experience of people living with Alzheimer's and dementia, the majority provide care for more than 4 years. Not unexpectedly, the vast majority report very high emotional stress and strain. And then the association put out a special report on Alzheimer's, race, ethnicity, and Alzheimer's this March. And there was a lot of data shared in that nationwide report that indicates that caregivers of color report bias and discrimination, and they have more barriers to access. So everything we're talking about today, the hurdles that caregivers face, those hurdles are higher and more difficult to address among communities of color. If you wanted to learn more, there are facts available online. So I wanted to talk about what the association does here locally in Sacramento County and the surrounding region. All of our services that are provided through our local office, which is located on Response Road near Cal Expo, and will be opening up again. We're so looking forward to that in August. All of our services are free and available to anyone in the community. We work with individuals with dementia and Alzheimer's, as well as family members and caregivers and professionals. We can offer care consultations to help you navigate the disease process at different intervals to help you get started, and as things change as the disease progresses. We have lots of peer-to-peer support groups, whether it's individuals with dementia who are in the early stages, meeting with each other, with caregivers providing peer support. We offer community education on a variety of topics, topics such as healthy living for your brain and body that apply to everybody who wants to learn more about how they can reduce their own personal risk of Alzheimer's and dementia through difficult conversations about dementia, communication, behaviors, and the like. We also offer professional training to physicians, social workers, individuals who work in long-term care settings like nursing homes and assisted living. And we have a local resource finder. So whatever it is that you may need, if it's placement in long-term care, if it's respite care, adult daycare, adult day health care, we can help connect you to local resources in our community. And for anyone, anywhere, we're very proud that we offer an 800 number that's staffed with master's level clinicians 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and can provide services in hundreds, dozens, if not hundreds of languages. So we urge people to use our helpline if you have any questions, and lean into our expert resource there, as well as our website, alz.org, is available to anyone. As we heard from Congressman Bera, he and his wife were caring for a family in Los Angeles, and something that for his in-laws. So our helpline and our website can help you navigate if you're a distance caregiver as well. We can move to the next slide. We wanted to thank the congressman, especially there is a bill pending right now in Congress among the many other incredible opportunities that were referenced previously, the Alzheimer's Caregiver Support Act, and the congressman has signed on as a co-sponsor, and we're extremely grateful for his support of this. And what this will do is provide grants to expand training and support opportunities specific to Alzheimer's and dementia. And it will ensure that a percent of this funding is directed to medically underserved communities. We hope that if this passes, that our own Area 4 Agency on Aging and local senior centers will be the beneficiaries of this funding, so they can do more targeted and tailored education and training for dementia caregivers. Next slide. I wanted to touch a bit on what's going on in the state of California. We are leading the nation here, and we're extremely proud of our local work. Local work here in Sacramento at the state capitol. It started with a legislative task force on family caregiving that produced a wonderful report and outlined a series of recommendations, many that have since been implemented or are in process of being implemented. And the biggest of those would be to expand the network of California Caregiver Resource Centers. You heard mention of Del Oro earlier, so we're strong advocates of expanding that network that includes the Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center network. We also concluded earlier this year, I give tremendous credit to Governor Newsom and the legislature that they pressed on with the Master Plan for Aging and the Alzheimer's Task Force in the midst of a global pandemic. And we have a series of recommendations that have translated from both of those activities into the governor and legislature's budget. So we expect to see next week, when the budget is finalized in California, new funding for caregiver supports in our Area Agency on Aging network, increased pay and training for in-home supportive service workers, most of whom are family members. In California, we're one of the only states that pay family members to provide in-home care through the Medicaid program. And we also have opportunities to partner with academic institutions like UC Davis around caregiver training and certification programs. Next slide. And last, if there's anybody on this call who wants to become more involved in the state and federal work around Alzheimer's, dementia, and caregiver advocacy, we'd ask you to text to this number, 52886 AIM, text AIM to 52886, and we'll be happy to follow up with you if you would like to use your voice and your experience and your story to change public policies for the better, for all conditions, Alzheimer's, cancer, Parkinson's disease, and everybody who serves as a caregiver. And my last plug is that in our region, we have a walk to end Alzheimer's on October 2nd, and we look forward to seeing many of you there in person this year. We're very excited about that. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to join you this afternoon.
Thanks, Susan. We really appreciate it. And thanks for also mentioning the Walk to End Alzheimer's. I've joined a few times at the one here in Sacramento. It's always a great event. Next, I'd like to introduce our last featured speaker, which is Dr. Heather Young. Dr. Young is a nurse leader, educator, scientist, and nationally recognized expert in gerontological nursing and rural healthcare. She is National Director of the Betty Irene Moore Fellowship Program for Nurse Leaders and Innovators, and is also a professor and Dean Emerita for the Betty Irene Moore School of Nursing at UC Davis. She also focuses a lot of her research on healthy aging. Dr. Young co-leads the Healthy Aging in a Digital World initiative at UC Davis Health and co-directs the Family Caregiving Institute, as well as being a senior policy fellow with the AARP Public Policy Institute, focusing on policies and system supports for family caregivers. She has played many roles in healthcare as a nurse and nurse practitioner caring for older adults and their families, and as a family caregiver herself. Without further ado, thank you, Dr. Young, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Philip. It's such an honor to be here, and I want to thank everyone in the audience who's joining us today. Very wonderful that you could make it. I wish we were in person, but great to see you on Zoom. I also want to thank Congressman Bera for his steadfast commitment to promoting brain health, and to all the many stakeholders. We all work together as a community to advance these issues, and I'm so appreciative to be part of it. Next slide, please. I'm going to talk a little bit about the UC Davis Family Caregiving Institute, which was established a few years ago with generous funding from the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation. We have two main goals with our Family Caregiving Institute. One is to advance supports for family caregivers through research and education, and then also to increase the capacity of professionals and health systems to support family caregivers. We were funded by the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation, but we are also in partnership as founding members of the Home Alone Alliance, which is a national organization with AARP, Family Caregiver Alliance, and the United Hospital Fund. And I'll talk a little bit more about some of those activities soon. There's several main activities that we're engaged in to accomplish our goals, and our team includes over a dozen faculty, staff, postdoctoral fellows, and graduate students. On the research end, we're really delighted we were able to recruit two new young investigators to our team. Dr. Fawn Kothran, who's in the top left, is doing wonderful work on stress and resilience among Black caregivers, bringing a racism and equity lens to her work. And Julie Bidwell is very interested in dyads, how people who are caring for someone and the person they're caring for work together to manage chronic conditions such as congestive heart failure. We're also working on a national level with AARP on studies of caregiver research, and I'll talk about one of those in a moment. And we're the lead evaluators for the California Caregiver Resource Centers. And you've heard about Delora, and you'll be hearing more from them soon. But they all received additional funding from the California governor to expand their online supports for family caregivers, and we're working with them. On the workforce end, we do a lot of work on preparing professionals. We offer a graduate certificate in family caregiving, and it helps professionals to design and implement programs to support family caregivers. And then we're very active in policy, primarily in providing the research and the evidence that helps to advance reasonable ideas and good ideas for policy and for advocacy. I was very honored to work with Susan Demaris and many others on the California Master Plan for Aging, and that's an area that we really looked at a lot of the issues and the evidence behind them as well. And as both Carla and Congressman Bera highlighted, as well as Kate, economic supports are vital, and I think we have a particular opportunity to communicate with our representatives from our professional positions and also as family caregivers about how important these issues are. It's exciting to see the activity at the federal level, thinking about caregiving as vital infrastructure, and so I'm really excited about that. And then finally, the UC Davis Health has recently established a healthy aging clinic that's a primary care clinic at our Midtown setting. It serves older adults, and members of our faculty from the Caregiving Institute are providing consultation services directly to family caregivers there. I want to turn next to one of our large studies that we completed with AARP, which is called Home Alone Revisited. And this was a deeper dive into some of the data that, and a second survey that Kate referenced earlier on, the National Caregiving in the U.S. study. We noticed with the Caregiving in the U.S. study that the people are doing really complex things, and we wanted to do a deeper dive. And so this is a particular study that went into greater depth on what kind of complex care people are providing. And I'm going to put into the chat an address for all of you, a website, so that you can look it up if you'd like to see this particular study in all of its detail. On the next slide, we'll show you some of the main findings. What we found in this study is that today's caregivers are providing intense and complex care. So many medical nursing tasks, things that as a nurse I was afraid to do when I started out, and we're asking family caregivers to do these things now, including managing pain. We found that over half, 57% of care recipients have cognitive or behavioral health needs. And these are complicated situations in terms of both behaviors and social dynamics, and very challenging for caregivers, whether it's dementia or Parkinson's or some other kind of an issue. We also found that caregivers are diverse. They come from many different backgrounds and experiences, and their experiences are also diverse, that depending on your age, your gender, your racial ethnic background, whether you're working or not, all of those things shape the way you experience the caregiving opportunity. Over 60% of caregivers are working, and that really does provide a whole other layer of complexity and a great deal of demand. We also found that caregivers who are socially isolated or have no choice about becoming a caregiver are at much greater risk for experiencing difficulties with complex care. And this gives some hints to those of us who are in the helping professions about who we should be really asking and looking at when we see this type of a risk and someone is dealing with a lot in terms of their role. We also found that caregivers who perform these complex tasks have both a positive and a negative effect in their lives. We often are worried about the negative effects, the stress, the strain, and all of those issues that are going on. But caregivers also talk about the benefits, that there's a meaning in caregiving, that it's an important way to give back and to give to the family, and that it's also an opportunity for many to learn new skills and to develop new ways of thinking about problems. And so there are some positive aspects to caregiving as well as the negative. And then finally, that truly caregivers are often on their own, and this is a wake-up call to health systems, that we could really do a whole lot better to support, to reach out, identify who is a caregiver when we see someone, find out what's really going on and what they might need and what kind of preparation they might need. Carla described her journey, and so did Kate, and they became very expert in many ways. But oftentimes we're not asked along the way what we actually need and how we can be supported. And so any of us who are in the role of supporting others need to ask these additional questions. I just want to briefly mention our other work that's related, that's I think going to be increasingly important, which is the Healthy Aging in a Digital World initiative. We're collaborating with investigators, researchers, and faculty across the entire UC Davis campus, from health sciences to engineering to social sciences, law, and business, to think about how technology, enabling technology, can help. And a lot of the work that we're focusing on is how to make technology more accessible, affordable, and available to older adults and their caregivers in particular. Many people say, I'd rather live in my own home as long as I can. And to do that, sometimes technology can be supportive. The next slide shows the model that we think about, a number of different technologies. There are the technologies that are on your body, the sensors that tell you your activity levels or how you're doing with your movements or your sleep or your mood. There are also devices in the home that can be supportive. So things like medication dispensers that will alarm if you've missed a dose, or being able to detect if someone gets out of bed and gets going in the morning or opens the refrigerator to eat. So those kinds of devices. And then there's also technologies that enable social connection, whether it's communication with family and friends or with our healthcare providers, or actually to learn things online. And then finally, there's the connections with the healthcare team and bringing together all of these different sources of data. So a lot of what we're focusing on is how to make sense of this data and make it useful and usable for a person who's aging in the home. And in particular for brain health, we're very interested in how technology can be used to help stimulate engagement and activity and help with memory and help with being able to retain and to manage routines in life. And in my final slide, I just want to bring your attention to some resources that we've developed with AARP, and they're in we have many of these videos are in Spanish as well, and some in Chinese. And these videos are intended for caregivers to help with very basic kinds of things, but they're tutorial. They're about 3 to 4 minutes long each, and there's a number of series that address issues such as mobility, managing medications, incontinence. We're starting one right now on pain management. There's one that's coming out very soon about how to manage being hospitalized. So I encourage you to take a look at these videos if you have an interest, and feel free to share them with others as well. Wound care is another topic that we did that has been very important for people. So with that, I will close. And again, thank you so much for being here today and for this opportunity to talk with you.
Thank you, Dr. Young. Really appreciate your insight and your expertise. And we'll look forward to hearing you in a little bit with the Q&A portion as well. All right, before we get to the Q&A, we have a few resource providers that we would like to give a brief remarks on their organizations as well as the resources they provide to the community. And we're fortunate to be joined by first Nina Weiler, Associate State Director for AARP California. Welcome,
So,
Nina.
good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for having me today. AARP is a membership organization representing and working with individuals 50 and over. We have 3.3 million members in California. AARP, you've already heard about a couple of the resources, but very quickly, you'll see on this page some of our top resources, which includes an online caregiving resource center website, which has just a plethora of information, lots of articles. You could really spend a lot of time on that page. It pretty much covers any topic you could think of. We have our Prepare to Care guides, which will help individuals and their families to plan for the caregiving journey. And these are actually available and targeted to multiple audiences in California. They're also available in Chinese and Spanish. We have a caregiver resource line. You can see that here. There is a phone number. It is available Monday to Friday. You'll have to go on the site or look a little more deeply for the hours, but it is available and also in Spanish. Finally, we have group forums and chats focused on caregiving. Next slide, please. Hi, Heather. As Heather already teed up with Heather's institution, we have developed caregiving instructional videos, so I won't go a whole lot into that, but the links are on the PowerPoint here. We have state-specific resource guides that are online. So California, they're statewide, and there's also guides for specific communities. Not every community in California, but among them are Sacramento, Yolo, Los Angeles County. We have one for San Francisco and also one for San Diego, Chula Vista. If you're not in those areas, definitely go look at the statewide guide. We do live monthly webinars for caregivers as well. And we also have a caregiving Facebook group. There are so many ways to connect with us. We have constant local events as well, some of which are targeted to caregivers. And I will find we actually have a local events page that I will put into chat. So thank you for the time, for having me here today, and happy to take questions when we get around to that.
Thank you, Nina. I really appreciate you joining us. Next, we're going to hear from Michelle Nevins, who's the Executive Director of the Del Oro Caregiver Resource Center.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm just so thankful to be here and among such great company. We have so many wonderful resources in the state of California. We all work so well together. If we could move to the Del Oro slide, that would be great. Thank you so much. You will see at the bottom of our slide our contact information. I will also put in the chat box a separate online portal that you can access our services through. We are part of a statewide system of California Caregiver Resource Centers. So there's 11 of us in the state of California. We're very fortunate to have this service. No matter where someone lives in the state of California, there's a resource center to serve them. Del Oro actually serves 13 counties, so we keep pretty busy. Our whole mission is to improve the well-being of family caregivers throughout their journey. And when we say family caregivers, we mean chosen family as well, defined by you. Our services, all of which are free, include information referral. We do that for anyone that contacts us in any way that they prefer to receive the information. We also provide local support groups. We keep a listing of partner support groups on our website as well. We do a lot of education and training on a variety of different topics, most of which is online. We'll be resuming in person probably in the fall, so keep a lookout for that. Family consultation, which is our ongoing relationship that we have with our families. We follow up with them over time. We do an intake process, a very thorough assessment. We screen for depression, but most importantly is that we provide emotional support. We provide resources. We provide a listening board, someone that's neutral, non-judgmental about your caregiving situation. We offer, of course, a plan of care in concert with our families. It's your most pressing need that we kind of help you solve together. And that's, again, ongoing process. We also offer case management in some of our counties. Of course, Sacramento is one of those. We provide respite care, which is a much needed break from the situation that you're up against. We do that in the form of in-home care, adult day, and a short-term stay at an assisted living facility or a combination thereof. We also offer legal consultations and short-term counseling for family caregivers. Again, all of our services are free. There's some basic eligibility requirements, but time is of the essence, and I want to cover the basics. Again, I will put an online portal that we are launching. It's called CareNav in the chat box, so that you, if anyone's interested in connecting with us and doesn't have time to phone us, you can check out that portal, and we will get back to you as quickly as possible. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. We appreciate you joining us. All right, and next I'd like to introduce Linda Revola, Director of Programs at Meals on Wheels. Welcome, Linda.
All right, thank you, everyone. I'd like to also thank the Congressman for his ongoing support of Meals on Wheels, and Philip in particular for inviting us to this forum. I'm also a caregiver for my elderly parents, and to show you how all interconnected we all are, Nina and Heather, this is for you. My mother was the person who starred in your video on medication management. So it's, we pass it around the family every once in a while and we laugh because now she really has dementia, and she was a better actor than we all knew. Anyway, so Meals on Wheels, this is an overview of what we normally do. We have two basic programs. One is home delivered meals. We serve about 1,400 people with that, and seniors get 5 frozen meals once a week or a hot meal every Monday through Friday. This includes home visits by our caseworkers and our volunteer drivers. Normally, we also have 20 congregate nutrition sites around Sacramento County. And here's a picture of one of them. We serve a hot meal there. This is usually we have about 650 people. They come there for socialization, different activities, education, bingo, whatever the sites provide. Some are in churches, some are in community centers, some are in senior apartment buildings. We serve about, so that means we serve about 2,000 meals a day, Monday through Friday. We have a huge volunteer program. So volunteers deliver the hot meals. They have their set route once a week or whatever, and they get to know their seniors really, really well. And it's like a family feel. They're all very attached. And that's why we like to say we provide more than just a meal. And I just put in funding, Older Americans Act, grants, fundraising. Okay, next slide. So during the pandemic, we had to shut our 20 congregate sites and deliver meals to everybody and we lost all of our volunteers overnight because most of our volunteers are seniors, and we had our phones ringing off the hook. So it was the perfect storm, but and at our peak, we served, I think, 22,700 people. Like I said, all meals were delivered frozen. We also delivered boxes of shelf-stable meals for people that don't have a microwave or don't want a microwave. And that includes our, some of our unhoused population. And the shelf-stable meals were also delivered in case of emergencies. Like if your power goes out, you can open up our box of food and make a meal. And we did some special programs as a little pick-me-up. So for example, for Thanksgiving, we DoorDashed Denny's Thanksgiving meals to 2,000 people, something like that. So now we haven't reopened our congregate nutrition sites, but we are starting to open them up as drive-through pickups. So you can drive through, pick up your 5 frozen meals once a week, and be on your way. We're starting 2 of our hot routes up again. So those are volunteer dependent, and that means volunteers are coming back. So little but slowly, we're going to go back to normal. We're going to start doing in-home assessments again, and just start picking up our other kind of face-to-face services slowly and safely. And then, as I said before, volunteers are coming back. So next slide, please. Eligibility. Participants have to be age 60 or better. They have to reside in Sacramento County because we are Meals on Wheels Sacramento. There's Meals on Wheels in Yolo County, Meals on Wheels in Placer, or no, I think that's Senior first, but in every county has its own Meals on Wheels, but we're Sacramento only. And we like to focus on people who are most in need. So the most in need would be a senior who is homebound, and that person would probably, and doesn't have a lot of support. We do have a lot of participants that have a diagnosis. I mean, we know that. Sometimes we're the only person that they might see in a week, and they have a long distance caregiver, like a child in another state who's in contact with us. So those are some of the people we serve. We also do provide meals for a caregiver, like a spouse who might not be 60 years old. We consider those our caregiver respite meals. Our funding, and that's why I mentioned it earlier, is through the Older Americans Act. So there's no fee for the service, but if you want, you can make a suggested anonymous contribution. So how do you sign up? You call that phone number there, 444-9533, and the intake staff will start the process. I have our website there, and that's my name. I'm Linda Revola, I'm the Director of Programs, and that's my email if you'd like to reach me. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Linda. Really appreciate you joining us and providing this resource. And also, I believe it was a few years ago, the Congressman Bera was able to join Meals on Wheels ACC, delivering the 4 millionth meal.
Oh, that's right.
By the organization. So that was awesome for him to join that. All right, great. So now we're going to move into our Q&A portion. A reminder, we do have the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, please use that. We do have a few questions already, and we'll get that started. Before that, though, I'd like to introduce Veronica Mijic, who is the Public Policy and Advocacy Manager with Alzheimer'S Association Northern California, who will be moderating the Q&A and will bring the featured speakers back in.
I wanted to get us started with another question I saw here. I think given all of the wonderful information that we heard, it's hard to know where to start. So I think given that we are focused today on a dementia Alzheimer's audience, Susan, could you tell us a bit more about what's a good place to start? How do we enter this fold of, I'm an overwhelmed caregiver, where's the best starting point?
Definitely. So I would say whatever stage of the journey you're in, if you're someone who's starting to worry about someone you love or yourself, or you're already well on your way, everybody's starting at a different point. And at the Alzheimer's Association, we're prepared to meet you where you are. So the first step would be possibly calling our 800 number, 1-800-272-3900, which will get you started and connect you to our local office. We'd also be happy to arrange a care consultation with you where we could talk about your individual circumstances, what's important to you, what you know so far, what you don't know, where the gaps are. I saw somebody mentioned about Veterans Affairs. You know, we can help identify what you're eligible for and where you might have opportunities for coverage or services and supports that are available to you. And link you to all the wonderful people on this webinar too, as appropriate. So the 800 number, alz.org, or best of all, we'd like to connect with you locally with our team right here in Sacramento.
Thank you, Susan. And I'm going to broaden that question out because I know we have other caregivers in the presentation as well. Heather, maybe you can start, and Kate, maybe you can follow up with same question, but as a non-dementia caregiver, what might be a good place to start in your own experience?
I really highly recommend the California Caregiver Resource Centers, and Delora, Michelle's on this call, and her team are ready to receive. I think what's really important about those resource centers is they start with an assessment of helping you figure out what it is you need now, because oftentimes people need a lot of different things, and the things you need change over time. And so it's not a one-time conversation, because there's evolving needs and new information that you're responding to. So I totally agree with Susan about the Alzheimer's Association doing that comprehensive conversation about where you are now and what you need, and that's what the California Caregiver Resource Centers do as well. And they can actually walk you through your priorities and then make referrals to things, whether it's respite care or other kinds of services you might need, or it's education, connection, support, because I think it's really important to get a sense of what's important now, because it can be very overwhelming, and it's important to have someone to guide you to what's going to help today to get started.
Thank you, Heather. Kate, same question to you.
Yeah, I would really echo what both Susan and Heather said. I would also really underscore the resource that AARP provides on their website that Heather and Nina both spoke to, the training videos, the comprehensive approach to all the different resources. They have a lot of resources related to emotional health and maintaining your self-care as a caregiver, talking about the feelings that you have on entering the journey, and then whatever the disease or condition may be that you're caregiving for, there's almost always a disease or condition specific organization, such as the Alzheimer's Association. In my case, I reached out to the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, and they were incredibly helpful with resources, positioning, figuring out where you are and like how to go forward. Those are really the places that I would start. And I would also just add, you know, online support groups, kind of asynchronous ways to connect with other caregivers, and building a personal network of other people who've been there, I think is really critical to emotional health, but it can be very difficult in terms of making the time to attend, say, an in-person support group. You know, one thing we know about caregivers is that many of us are overwhelmed and busy. So looking for those online resources, making connections locally with peers that can be informal is also just a really, really important support.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks.
So I'm going to go to Susan next with this next question of how important is it to have the specific dementia diagnosis? Someone's had a spouse that has had, quote, cognitive impairment for 4 years and has now lost driving privileges. So just, could you speak a little bit to the importance of having that dementia diagnosis and what it might impact in terms of a caregiving role?
Sure. I think we would always err on the side of having a diagnosis. I think that's going to, if navigation is the most difficult part, it's going to help you understand what's going on as a caregiver and tap into the resources that you need to partner with your physician to identify programs and services you may be eligible for that may be beneficial. So if you don't have a diagnosis, that's, the first place to start is talking with your primary care physician and asking questions and pushing if you have to get some answers. If you know that something's not right, please advocate for yourself and your loved one to get the answers that you need.
Thanks, Susan. Heather, to you, a question that I saw you answered in the chat, but for the benefit of those who might not be reading that, is the UC Davis Family Caregiving Institute limited to those who only have UC Davis coverage, or is everyone, is that open to everyone?
Great question. Our educational offerings and our research are open to everyone. And if you are interested in specific consultation services, you do need to be enrolled as a patient with UC Davis Health, and that would be through the Healthy Aging Clinic. But we work so closely with our partners at the Alzheimer's Association and the California Caregiving Resource Centers that we really look to them for that initial contact and providing information and support. And then it's really a way to get access to all the things you need beyond that. So you might call with one question and have another need, such as I see in the chat, getting a power of attorney worked out. And those organizations can help guide you towards that legal advice and that kind of support. So think of it as a clearinghouse of plugging you in to other resources.
Wonderful, thank you. Over to Nina about AARP, kind of a similar question. Do you need to be a member of AARP to access the online resources or to attend local events?
No, you do not. So the good news is the events are free and you do not need to be a member to access our resources, to ask us questions, or to attend our events. We're here for you.
Thank you, Nina. Okay, Susan, back over to you. Given what we've been hearing in the news this week, there's been an announcement of an FDA-approved treatment for Alzheimer's. Can you speak a little bit? The question here says, I heard on the news that researchers have found a treatment for Alzheimer's disease, but is it effective in all cases? Is it a solution? Can you tell us more?
Sure. I'm so happy to speak to this because this was really a groundbreaking announcement on Monday by the FDA, the first new treatment for Alzheimer's in 20 years. The drug that was approved, aducanumab, is effective with mild cognitive impairment. So it's only effective in the very early stages of Alzheimer's and dementia. So to the person's question earlier about, is there value in getting a diagnosis? This could be the beginning of people seeking a diagnosis because there may be a treatment available. We're very excited. I shared in the chat the statement from the FDA and the National Institute of Aging at the National Institutes of Health. We're learning more about what this means for the worldwide Alzheimer's community with the approval of this new treatment. And so again, it would be something really important to speak to your own physician about. If you have questions and you think that you or someone you love may be a candidate for this treatment with mild cognitive impairment, we would encourage you to explore that with your physician. But it is a start. It is not the end, and it's a reminder it's not the cure for Alzheimer's, that Alzheimer's is a progressive degenerative disease. And so we need, as the Congressman said at the beginning, more breakthroughs for diagnostics and for other treatments and options across the full continuum of the disease.
Thank you, Susan. I'm going to go to Linda next about Meals on Wheels. So the question here says, the meals serve as respite, but another question, socializing in daycare is beneficial, like the Heart Center. What other leads can you give?
So leads in terms of other places to go to get socialization?
Exactly.
Okay, so, you know, most, or not most, but many assisted living communities also have day programs. I believe Carla talked about one that was $75 a day. The city of Sacramento has their RRR adult day program. Right now it's online, but once it goes back live, they have a short day that's, I believe it's $40 or $45 a day now, and they have a longer day that is, I believe, $75. But there are programs like that. If the loved one is more functional, they can try to go to senior centers that have activities. I used to run the AACC Senior Services Community Center, so we had music classes, we had cooking demonstrations, and we had people from, you know, with all abilities coming to those classes to participate. Sometimes a caregiver would come with them, sometimes a caregiver wouldn't. In particular, one of my most favorite things I ever did was I started a taiko drumming class, and we had people with dementia who were coming in for that class. And I also had art classes, very simple art classes that people can participate in. And don't forget the value of online classes for people with dementia or other conditions to participate in. My mother does chair Tai Chi, which has been online, which has been really wonderful. But in addition to that, I should talk about being able to talk to somebody live. There are telephone reassurance programs out there, like Eschaton has one where you call, you sign some forms and you call, and you get a call every day or once a week or twice a week, whichever you want. And so somebody who's home alone or bored talking to their caregiver can talk to somebody else. So those are just some of the things to start.
Yeah, you're very well connected. I appreciate you making all those connections for us. So a final question, and I'm just going to invite our original three panelists, Susan, Heather, and Kate, to give some thoughts here on, do you have any parting words, and maybe something to think about is for someone who might want to take on more in their caregiving journey, or just have a caregiving experience but may have a bit more availability, how can they get involved in being a voice for those who are caregivers? Why don't we start with Heather, since I see you on my screen?
All right, thanks, Veronica. What a wonderful thing to ask. I think that there's nothing like our own stories as people and what we experience in our journeys. And hearing from Carla and Kate today was very compelling. And I think as we advocate and as we educate legislators and people who represent us and people who can advocate for various aspects, it's those personal stories that really matter. So I would think about how to tell your story briefly, succinctly, and in a compelling way, and tell it over and often. Use it when you contact representatives to say, I'd like you to vote a certain way on something that they're looking at, and tell them your story, or write it and send it in. You can also connect with those of us who are educating, and we can invite you to be part of panels like today, if you let us know. And Susan Demaris, I know, keeps a wonderful Rolodex of people who could be spokespeople. Nina as well with the Aarp group, they always are looking for people who can be spokespeople on issues. And so there's opportunities within all of these organizations to volunteer your time and your energy, but most importantly, your story, because your story deserves to be heard. And it illustrates what is going on for so many more people. I think of every individual has their own story, but they represent issues that are really something that so many can resonate with and are so important to air.
Thank you. Over to Kate.
Yeah, I would really echo what Heather is saying, that telling your story, bringing more awareness and shedding light on caregiving, which is often just a hidden journey that's taking place behind closed doors. is so important. And this is, I really want to emphasize, this is a really hopeful moment for caregiving. We have real opportunity for policy change. It's a great time to be advocating with your congressman. Of course, if it's Congressman Bera, he's already very well aware of and supportive of the issues. But we have such an amazing opportunity right now as the pandemic, which spotlighted issues of care across our society, as we emerge from that. Getting involved with one of the organizations that has been present here is a wonderful way to do things. A challenge for caregivers has long and traditionally been that we simply don't have time to raise our voices together and organize. For me personally, my own caring responsibilities have eased, which is part of why I have the time and ability to talk more about the challenges of it and the broader landscape. And so for those who are fortunate to be in that position, I really suggest that. One organization I wanted to mention that I think is doing a lot to bring caregiver stories to light and a good place to connect might be Caring Across Generations as well. They're really often seeking caregiver stories, and I think they're doing a lot of that kind of narrative work to bring those stories to light. So those are just a few of my thoughts in that realm. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And we'll close out with Susan.
Yes, I would just echo what Kate and Heather said. And I think Barbara Marquez, who introduced the congressman, is a wonderful example that this is a relay, and often people find they have more bandwidth after they've been an active caregiver and they're more able to give back. And Barbara's the best example there is of that, for sure. But I also wouldn't want to deter anyone who is an active caregiver like Carla, because it may be as simple as writing a letter to the editor occasionally. It doesn't always mean going to an 8-hour conference or giving up hours of your time. There may be a niche role that you can fill. We're often looking for people who, we're trying to raise awareness, all of us collectively, of caregiving. So if the media says, we want to talk to somebody between the age of 40 and 42 who's a long distance caregiver to somebody, you may have a very unique story that can help raise awareness for everyone. And, just get connected with one of these organizations or another one. And I'm sure that your story can be elevated and it can help other people.
Thank you, Susan. So that will wrap up our Q&A session. Thank you everyone for the wonderful questions. And Philip, why don't you close us out?
I want to give a big thanks to the Alzheimer's Association, Veronica and Susan, as well as Carla and Barbara, Linda with Meals on Wheels, Nina with Aarp, Michelle with Del Oro, and thank you very much, Dr. Young and Kate Washington. We really appreciate your experience and expertise. So I think with that, we will end the program. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it.